So guys, welcome. And as I mentioned, it is the first home buyer webinar for 2026 here in February. And what are we going to be talking about tonight? So there are a lot of concerns. There's a lot of movement with about 40% of first home buyers actually transacting in the last 2-3 years per year on average. What happens to the rest of the 60%? Why are they not moving when clearly the market is steamrolling ahead? There's a lot of lack of confidence in the market. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of so much information out there, especially with ChatGPT and AI. Clients, people just in general have so much access to knowledge that they don't know who to trust. They don't know what to rely on. So tonight we'll be covering 4 different aspects of the first home buyer journey. We're going to talk about the benefits in a nutshell. I'll go through that real quickly. We'll do a bit of myth busting. That's going to be the crux of what we're talking about tonight. And we're going to be going through some case studies as well. And for our first home buyers and parents of first home buyers, a step-by-step journey. So let's kick it off with a bit of an introduction. My name is Mark Coronel from MC Properties and Advisory, and I'll be the property specialist for tonight. We have with us as well Ling Coronel, and she is the founder of LC Finance and Solutions. Welcome, Ling.
Thank you for that.
Welcome, and thank you for coming and joining us tonight. And of course, we cannot forget our legal specialist for tonight, Mr. Solon Hu. So if you're just tuning in, Solon is the founder and principal of Royer Mace Lawyers, a good friend and a confidant that I've sent a lot of clients through, a special accredited specialist in property law. Welcome, and thank you for coming tonight, Solon.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, so to kick it off, it's about getting the information out to you guys. We're going to get through that really quickly. So first of all, the benefits. When we're talking about the benefits, most first home buyers, when we ask them, what are the benefits? They only know 1 or 2. Everyone knows the first home owner grant. That's the one right up the top. That's that $10,000 one-off cash payment from the government. It's a federal grant for property prices in New South Wales under $600,000. Then they kind of know what's happening with stamp duty, because I think in terms of all the grants, this is the biggest chunk that you're arguably trying to claim. Stamp duty in New South Wales is about that 4%, depending on how much the property price is. But you're saving that if you've got properties up to up to 800,000, you save on full stamp duty. Correct me if I'm wrong at the same time, guys. And you've got concessions up to $1 million. It's a bit different for house and land, where the land value needs to be under 350,000. And to be honest, there's not too much of that in Sydney right now.
If you find one, let me know.
We'll take it. Take it straight away. And the other thing that people might know is the home guarantee scheme, where they're saving a little bit on the LMI, otherwise where the government acts as the guarantor, and you're saving between. You can purchase a property with 2 to 5% deposit, and the government acts as that guarantor to waive your lender's mortgage insurance. There are 2 other benefits, and they are the first home super saver scheme that you can contribute to. So they save inside super and they release their funds. There is prior ATO determination around this. We've got more detail. So if you want to know more about each of these individual grants and schemes, they are available on the internet, but you can contact us at MC Properties. After this, we'll have some details, and we can give you a full pack that has all of the information detailed there. There is another scheme which has recently been updated. It's the Help to Buy scheme. So this is where clients don't have to fork out up to 100% of the property value. They can actually purchase, and the government co-contributes up to 40% equity on the property.
That's a lot.
It is. There are some terms and conditions around that, but it does make entering the market a little bit easier for eligible buyers. Okay, so very quickly through that. But like I said, if you want a copy of the detailed information, broken down, summarized for you, we've got that available for you. So myth busting. This is where probably a lot more people are going to be tuning in and taking notes. And if you aren't, you'll be missing out unless you've got a copy of the recorded session. So let's kick off. The first myth is you need 20% to buy. Ling, what is this myth?
Okay, so in short, to do this myth busting is that no, you don't need 20% deposit to purchase a property. So across Australia, there are lenders who are willing to lend you a home loan even if you have between 5 to 10% deposit. And with a government scheme, you can go in as little as 2% deposit, and there will be lenders that support that kind of 98% loan with conditions.
Wow. Okay. So when we're talking about loans, could you break it down, unpack that a little bit? Because as a first home buyer, sometimes you think, yo, you've got to have in like the full amount. Not everyone has the full amount, spare $1 million, around. We're not all gifted with, parents passing us that money.
Yeah.
Or the ability to just, buy everything in cash. How does that work in terms of the loan process?
Okay, so if you don't have 20% deposit, let's say if you have 5% deposit, you can actually get a loan with 95% loan to buy a home to live in or to invest. And generally speaking, you may need to pay for this thing called lender's mortgage insurance, which Mark mentioned before. But with an eligible government scheme, or if you're a specialist in a particular field, then you may not need to pay for that.
Okay, awesome. In terms of when we are talking about the legal side, where does it say in a contract that you have to have a certain amount to secure a property?
Yeah, so
Does it say 20%?
no, it actually doesn't say 20%. From a contract perspective, on the front page, it'll always say a 10% deposit, and then everything else you pay that on settlement. So probably the best way to distinguish this is that from a legal perspective, deposit is 10% or less unless it's agreed upon, and then everything else is funds from the bank or your contribution, which the shortfall between what's needed and what the bank is lending.
Awesome. So where does this myth come from? Like, I think it's maybe an old school sort of mentality where it's like, well, if I've got 20%, most lenders will give me, based on 80% LVR, that it's pretty standard or low risk. And anything above that, if they have to borrow more,
It's deemed a little bit riskier, so you're correct. So anything under 80% loan, generally you get a better interest rate, and of course you save on this massive lender's mortgage insurance. I think that's why there is a sort of preconceived notion or old thinking that you have to have 20% to get a loan. That's where the thinking comes from. You generally get a better rate.
look, if you got 20%, fantastic. It just means that you're saving on lender's mortgage insurance, which from our studies, that's between 2.2 to about 4.8% of how much you're borrowing. So it could actually be more than that, depending on, again, how risky it is. But it is insurance at the end of the day. So, guys, first and foremost, you don't need 20% to enter the property market. In fact, there are some platforms and some schemes where we can enter with less than that.
Correct. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think, look, shout out to a mutual friend of ours, Josie, and the team at Coposit. You guys are doing a fantastic job. This is a platform like many others that, we're not sponsored by them. If you want to sponsor, fantastic. But these guys allow buyers to enter the property market secure with just $10,000. Okay, and that's recognized by all financial institutes as well. Okay, so cool. Let's move on to the next myth. All first homes are starter homes. Just get in anywhere. What is this? Like, is this safe to be advising clients on this, especially if they're a first home buyer?
I'll jump in over here. Like, I definitely would not agree to the last part there where just getting anywhere. This is a real example, right? So recently I've got a client who is selling a property. She purchased this back in around 2005, 2007. It's a property in on George Street in the city. Purchased it at 1.2 million, and then now she's wanting to sell the property, and it's now valued at about 950,000 thereabouts. So I guess you don't want your first property to inhibit you to buying your second, your third, and so on. So your first property is quite important, I would say.
Awesome. So when we're talking about that, why is it so important from a lending perspective or a financial perspective that you really plan your first purchase?
I think that comes down to like strategy and how you want to, what goals that you want to achieve. Actually, I was just talking to a set of clients. They were confused whether to buy a home to live in and to invest. So I can provide them with the finance help, but I always ask them to reach out to their team, like a property specialist, to sort of plan out what are the options. Because I said to them, your first home probably won't be your forever home. Think about what you're going to do later. What happens when you have a family, have little ones? Where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years time, or even retirement? So I also disagree with just getting anywhere. You need to really sort of look at the elements like growth, rental. Is this going to be turned into a investment property later on down the track, or you just start with expanding your property portfolio? So consult professionals before you make a decision.
100%. I think, look, your first purchase, it's a big purchase. The statistics are less than 80% of Australians actually purchase properties in their lifetime. Okay, so the majority of people purchasing throw their life savings into it, and sometimes the choices they make with purchasing that first property can actually inhibit them or delay them. There's a saying where it's like, I don't believe there is a thing with buying a bad property, especially if you're buying in Sydney. There are some exceptions to that, but for the majority of cases, why Australia is within the top 3 of international investment over the last 2 decades is purely because we've got a very steady growth. When we're thinking that 5% over the last 100 years annual growth across Australia actually increased over the last 30 years to about 7.2%. It's consistent. It's great. The property that you first purchase is not necessarily a bad purchase. It just delays what you want to do down the track. And I think if you're going to purchase to build a portfolio and you're buying a first property to live in, as a first home buyer, and you max out your borrowing capacity, that can actually stop you from achieving that portfolio if that's something you want to do. So especially, could you comment on off the plan, like how does that work in terms of like valuations or a legal sense of
Like you mean like with future value?
yeah.
Yeah, look, I think with off the plan, it's I wouldn't say it's risky, but it's more like you just don't know what's going to happen in the future. But you can sign a contract today to buy an apartment for 700,000 and not settle for until 3 years later. Like we just don't know whether 3 years later is it going to remain at 700? Would it go up to 8? Would the value then go up to 800, or would it even go backwards and be like 650, 500? We just don't know. So that's just the nature of buying something that isn't built, that doesn't exist yet. No one knows what's going to be like.
And if any agent, I know I'm an agent myself, but if any agent tells you that this property is going to grow by a certain amount, they're misleading you. No one has a crystal ball about what is going to happen in 6 months' time. Dare I say, even within 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? When some of these off the plans complete, some don't even complete. We've had some fantastic cases where people have jumped in with low deposits and the properties have increased by the time they've had to settle. And we've also had the opposite end.
Yeah. I mean, like I've seen the worst and the best. Like the best was, I think someone purchased an off the plan apartment. By the time it was ready to settle, value has went up. The area size have went up by over 10%. I think it was about 15 thereabouts. Went up 15% in area size, and they didn't have to pay $1 extra.
Fantastic.
That's like on a good side, good end. But then on the bad end, you have the ones where they waited years, 3 years, 5 years, and then in the end, the developer couldn't finish the construction, couldn't finish the development, and all the buyer got back was just the deposit. Wow. But they've already spent time waiting, they've already spent on legal fees, and they missed out on the opportunity while they were waiting. So that's probably the worst that I've seen.
Opportunity cost loss there. How does it work in terms of valuation? Can you explain valuations for a first home buyer?
Okay. So valuation is simply an independent, assessment of the value of the property as compared to the contract price. So like what Solong said, that there could be 3 sort of results, that the valuation comes back matching the contract price, above the contract price, or below the contract price. And it's important to note that the lender actually lends against the property valuation at the time of application, not the property contract price.
Let me summarize that, guys. So if you're buying a property, so on contract, you're buying it for say $1 million. If you go to a bank, they're going to get someone else, a third party, to independently see the value of that property. If they don't see that it's $1 million, so say it's 900K, then you've got a shortfall of 100K, and they're only going to be lending against that 900K valuation,
Correct.
not how much you've paid for the property or will be paying for it. Okay,
And they may not be paying that whole 900K. It's what, 80% of that 900, right? Is that?
Depending on
Depending on
yeah.
what they borrow.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Let's move on to the next myth. I have a pre-approval. I am safe.
Oh.
Ooh, I see you smiling. You've heard this one before.
Yes, I do. There are some misconceptions. So pre-approval is only indicative amount that you can borrow from a particular lender. It does come with conditions such as, what is that property value subject to independent valuation, and if you're purchasing an investment property, what is the actual rental? So, for example, at the pre-approval stage, the estimated rental income is 600. But what if the valuation comes back and say this property only can rent out 550? So that comes to a point where where the lender will reassess what you have applied for. Well, pre-approval is not a bad thing. It's more of an assurance rather than a guarantee. So moving from pre-approval to approval, there are a few things that the lender needs to look at.
Okay, fantastic. So it's such a good conversation so far.
Yeah. I've actually got an interesting case regarding this specific one.
Okay.
I had a friend who was buying a property, got a pre-approval, everything looked good. They can, the price, the amount at which they can borrow was good, was enough for the property. They signed the contract, it got exchanged, and then the bank came back and said they're not lending a single dollar for that property. I've only seen that ever once, but it just forever stuck in my head. So the reason why was because that particular property was right next to one of those big, massive towers. Look, I don't know whether it's a safety thing or some sort of issue, but the bank was like, nope, we're not lending.
See, that blows my mind because it's like you have in writing that they're going to lend to you. And this is the misconception that people are safe. They feel like I've got this letter from the bank. They're going to lend me this amount. I can go to my auction. I can put this offer down. This is how much they're going to get. So that really plays an impact. And when we are talking about banks lending to a particular location, what are some factors that limit or are the reason why banks don't lend for a particular property?
So for different banks have their own policy. So one of the a typical example is called the postcode restriction. So for example, in high density areas, the bank may not want to lend up to 95%. They may restrict the lending to 80% of the property value. Another example is in any particular building. It's called the Security Development Register. So a particular lender will have a long list of buildings and projects, named projects that they will not lend to, for example, someone purchasing it as an investment property. So there will be like a big cross that they don't lend to any purchases within that building.
So it's like they blacklist that.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Restrictions, yep.
So buildings, developments,
Buildings and
developers,
postcodes.
Postcodes
Correct.
have restrictions. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so let's move to the next myth. You don't need a solicitor to review a standard contract. I've got ChatGPT. I've got DeepSeek. I've got a mate who's purchased the property before. They can look through the pages. It's all in there. What's your thoughts, Solon?
I've kind of given up on telling people that you need legal advice. Like I've given up. I just tell them like, look, I make more money resolving problems rather than preventing problems. So go ahead, do what you want to do. Come back to me when there's a problem,
We've sent a few people. Like, we make the recommendation. At the end of the day, it's up to their volition whether or not they take the advice. We give the tools, the people, but it's up to everyone to be confident with their own decisions. And people think that they can save a buck using an $800, $900 conveyancer. What's the difference between a solicitor and a conveyancer?
Yeah, like look, and just to add a little bit from before, like I still recommend people get legal advice. Don't just do it themselves. But put it this way, right? Like a lawyer is legally trained, right? They go through law school. They have to go through, practical legal training and all of that to be able to give legal advice. A conveyancer don't study law. And when you're looking at a contract or sale, what are you getting advice on? You're getting from a lawyer, you're getting legal advice. What does the term say? What does the contract say? So a conveyancer can't really give you legal advice. Like they're more than qualified to process the transaction, to help you become the next owner. But if you're looking for legal advice, making sure your rights are protected, making sure that no extra onerous obligations are put onto you, then yes, you probably should seek proper legal advice, and you can get that from a lawyer.
Can they represent you in court or that sort of thing? If
Conveyancer, no,
things
they
happen,
don't. Yeah.
things are wrong, like, or you need to, I guess, seek compensation or get some remuneration back.
Usually, what I see is when a conveyancer takes on a matter, they're working on a sale or a purchase. When everything's all good and fine, it's perfect, no issues. But as soon as issue arises, then what happens next? They'll say, "Sorry, I can't deal with this. Find a lawyer to help you."
Wow, awesome. All right, I can't mention it enough. It's more of a protection rather than suggesting something for a kickback. And if you are thinking that agents or anyone that refers to a solicitor gets some form of kickback, from what I know, it's actually illegal.
Yeah, we've actually got like the solicitor rules, and I wouldn't say it's illegal, but it's definitely frowned upon. So lawyers should not receive any kickback or give any kickback unless it is disclosed. So it's not really illegal, but it opens up like a whole can of worms. Like there could be conflict of interest, like you're not acting in the best interest of your client. Like imagine if, let's say you refer me clients and you give me a lot of kickbacks each time they sign the contract. The question here is like, would I then advise my client that there's something bad or would I try hide it from them so that they'll sign the contract? So that it creates that sort of relationship. So that's why we never give any kickback and we never receive any kickback.
Wonderful. Here's another one. I love this one because look, we have a lot of young clients and there are a lot of young people listening in. And look, coming out of university, coming out of high school, getting your first job, and then you start to think about starting a family, starting investing. You don't have the savings. How long does it take to come up with savings?
I think there's statistics showing that 20% will take you more than 8 years to save.
Wow. Okay. So that's a big chunk. And on average, property prices, as I mentioned, across Australia, not talking about isolated cases, but 7.2% growth, and year on year over the last 30 years versus barely 1% increase on wages. The gap is widening. So this is where parents can come in. We get a lot of parents coming in and asking, can I actually help? And they're not sure. So how can parents help when it comes to purchasing their first property?
There are actually few sort of practical ways if you want to help your children. One that comes quite often is a non-refundable or repayable gift. So you either give your children cash as the deposit for their first home. How much is purely dependent on your situation, and there are lenders who can recognize this as a genuine saving. That's number one, quite straightforward. And a second way is to offer a property as a security guarantee, and then actually your children will be able to borrow 100% plus stamp duty costs plus solicitor fees in order to get into the property market. So they don't need anything upfront. You don't need anything upfront, but you just need to tie your property to their purchase.
Wow. So there are ways that you can actually borrow the full amount.
Correct.
And fun fact, we've actually had some cases where we actually borrowed more than the property's value. So up almost, dare I say, up to 115%. But these are special cases where the guarantor, the asset was taken into consideration. So from a legal perspective, we've also had cases where the parent lends and then they've had the issue of, I don't like my son now, he's married the wrong person, they've made the wrong decisions, I want my money back. They've put down the gift how does that work? How do we legalize this agreement?
You can't really, because assuming they've given a gift, a sum of money as gift, I guess, like, as you said, is non-refundable. It is irrevocable. It's a gift. Like, you can't really get that back from, at least from the mortgage side. But like, yeah, like you can't really legalize that. Like, some people might suggest you to do a loan agreement. Like, for example, you tell the bank that it's a gift, but then you tell other people you've lent money to your child to buy the property. That creates an issue. If you say it's a gift and you lend money, you could be in breach of the loan with the first mortgagee.
Right.
Yeah.
From a banking or finance perspective, how does this gifting process work? How do the banks recognize a gift and it's not just, some splashed cash coming out of nowhere?
It's fairly simple. So firstly, the funds has to be in the children's account, so something visible, and also that would go side by side with a gift letter. So the parent would have to make a simple gift letter, sort of like a declaration, say, I give my son this amount of money. It is a gift, non-refundable, non-repayable, and yeah, sign with signature and contact details. It's fairly
Fantastic.
simple.
So have everything in writing and make sure all parties agree. Awesome. So there definitely are ways that parents can help. There was also a particular case that we've had where parents have purchased before and they've tried to co-purchase with their son or daughter. How does that work in terms of the borrowing and in terms of a legal perspective?
Legal perspective, no issues. Probably the part that's worth considering is the stamp duty benefit. I've dealt with this case before. If the parent was to hold 5% of or less of the property and the child owns 95 or more, then they could take that as almost as though the child is buying it completely themselves. So they could be eligible for the full stamp duty concession or exemption. That's probably one thing I could think of that would be beneficial to look at when a parent and child is purchasing.
I'll jump into that because I think from a lending perspective, I know that we've had some clients that have tried to go down this route, but in terms of lending, how is that recognized, that 595% split?
For some lenders, they actually require the parent to own more, like 30%. So really have to look at what's the lending requirements for any particular lender. But again, there are some lenders say you don't have to own anything. The child can be 100% owner, where the parents coming as we call this as a servicing guarantor. So just help with getting the borrowing amount for the purchase.
Fantastic. So understand, I guess, the lending side, and then in terms of the legal side, at least have it in writing what the share is when they're purchasing. Is that
Yeah, at the time of purchase, well, and it's really any time before settlement, the purchasers need to decide who owns how much, right? Like, it could be straight joint tenants, everyone, or it could be straight 50-50, or it could be an unequal share, like 70-30, 90-10, etc.
fantastic? All right. Next myth. This is a fun one because I'm an agent myself. A common sales tactic. My agent will look after me. When I talk about this particular myth, I want to talk about incentives. I want to talk about things that the agents sometimes promise, perhaps a service to the client, perhaps a rebate or that sort of thing. Who wants to jump in on this one?
Oh, well.
I think I wanted to jump in, to direct this first with Solon because I love it. Even though we refer you, Solon's got a very clear message to clients when they are dealing with him, and when clients are dealing with myself. Often they think that there's a vested interest when I send them over to you, but what do you say to them?
Oh, like at the start of every meeting, every client you refer over, I tell them straight off the bat that we don't act for Mark, we don't act for seller, we don't care what they want. We make sure we look after our client. Like, we want to protect them. And even when sometimes when you're in the meeting with us, like when we're going through the contract and we get to certain clauses, I even tell my clients, like, oh yeah, this clause, you can't trust what the agents say. Well, whatever if they said anything to you, we need to confirm this in writing with the seller's solicitor. And Mark is right there listening. And he's just nodding.
Look, at the end of the day, we sometimes as salespeople can, embellish a certain situation, and we can't help ourselves but make things sound really good. We fall in love with the product or the service that we're offering. If we don't believe in it, we're not going to be selling that, and you can feel the truth. But when it does come down to purchasing properties and investing such a big amount, sometimes with all these promises, you've got to have it in writing and you've got to have it reviewed, so that if you're getting into something and you're swayed because of this incentive, you've got to make sure that you get it for one. Can this affect lending if there are certain, say, rebates or cashbacks?
Most definitely. So if there's any rebate, it will actually affect the valuation of the property. So if you're purchasing something $1 million and there's a kickback for 50K, the bank or the valuer will actually value the property at $950,000. And if you're looking at, for example, borrowing 95% initially, then you can only borrow 95% of 950, and you have to come up with we call this a shortfall, which means extra funds to complete the purchase.
Okay. And in terms of the agents looking after you, I just want to put it into a perspective. Me myself being an agent myself, you've got to understand where we come from. A lot of agents, and there's over 240,000 agents or industry professionals working in real estate to this minute.
Like all of Australia or just
All
Sydney?
over Australia. In Sydney, we've got nearly 60 something percent of, so 2/3 of that is sitting in Sydney.
Wow.
It is one of the easiest things to get certification for. Okay, it's one of the industries where there's a lot of wealth creation, and people think, as a real estate agent, they watch the Lux listings, they watch, selling Sunset and these glamorous things on Netflix. Or I love it. That's it looks cool. Agents, they're living the dream. They're wearing nice watches. They're driving nice cars, selling multi-million-dollar properties. Look, this happens. It's not an easy job, and a lot of agents or a lot of people selling property have to work for commission only, so they don't get a salary. So as a buyer, I want you guys to understand that, like have a perspective for us as slimy salespeople, right? At the end of the day, we're trying to do this for our families also, but I think most agents these days are pretty genuine about their approach. If your agent is making you feel uncomfortable, question the motive. Why you're being so pushy about a particular purchase or about a certain step of the process. Timing is everything, and you might feel that like an agent is using pressure tactics. Quite a lot of agents now are getting cracked down with compliance because they're using pressure tactics to sell. And if you feel that your agent is being unethical in any way, shape, or form, or misleading, you need to go to fair trading.
What are some of the pressure tactics that they use, like in a nutshell?
Look, Mr. Solon, there's a beautiful property here. You've got fantastic taste. You've picked it, and you haven't put down a deposit. But look, there's two other people that my other clients, that my other work colleagues are working with at the moment, and if you want to get this property, you need to beat them too. Okay, sometimes they will bring up a case where I've seen this, where they will fake other buyers bidding on a purchase.
Wow.
Okay, and we've had to report this. I have, and at the end of the day, it's tactics to add pressure. So what we know about closing is it works off urgency. So they try to build up that sense of urgency. They work off scarcity, which is in a sense true. There is only one type of every property, like there is only one type of person, one of everybody, and value. Sometimes the value that an agent can talk about might be for the perspective really to make a property seem more than it actually is. They use lovely words like, oh, it's a cozy property. It's a renovator's dream. But at the end of the day, these are words, euphemisms to make you feel comfortable, to make you feel like this is more value than it is. So you need to do your due diligence about those properties and the areas that you're purchasing them in. And anything that your agent or a developer or a vendor is promising to you, you need to have that in writing. Okay, not just the amounts, but also a time frame. Cool. All right. Any other things you want to bring up?
About agents? Oh, there's plenty, but then
What's something that you've had a client not so much complain about an agent, but an issue that they've had?
usually it's just like usually they're most of the time they're little things. Like I had one client where after like before signing a contract, the agent like told my client that don't worry, you know, on settlement we'll remove this for you. Don't worry, it'll be done. The vendor will be okay. It's not in the contract, and obviously on settlement that item was not removed, and we have no leg to stand on because it's not on the contract.
Yeah.
Therefore, it has to stay. Like we can't get rid of it. So like just little things like that, nothing worth really chasing. Nothing like it's just little tiny things.
But all of these little things, they affect especially if it's your first home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little things like, oh, can that scuff on the wall, or you know that light bulb, or just all these little like scratches or minor defects that don't really inhibit your settlement, but it impacts the experience for buyers.
Yeah.
Okay, so really I think hold your agents accountable if they are going to bring that stuff up. Maybe have it in writing.
Have it in
So-
writing. Always just have it in writing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing is that a lot of agents will say, you know, I've got you. I'll take you by the hand and we'll go through this process together. I know I'm now responsible for a whole building's clients, pretty much. I wouldn't say where it is, but a whole development, because a lot of agents on that particular development disappeared. Fun fact about the industry, we have a very high turnover. So 2 years is deemed senior. If you're an agent within a company
Yeah.
and you last more than 2 years, you are a senior in that company.
Wow.
Okay, so there's a high turnover of real estate because at the end of the day, commission. You know, these guys are paid commission, and whoever's going to be offering more generally moves. And I think clients need to be aware of that. Unfortunately, if they're not going to be paid to look after them at settlement, then
Why would
They
they? Yeah.
they don't care, and that's truly how it is. So anyway, we burden that we take that burden on board, and we try to service all our clients like full settlement.
But there's one thing I would say is, so look, you get some bad agents, you get some good agents. But I have to say, Mark is one of the good agents. I actually have not heard a single complaint about you. Not a single complaint. And we've worked for like so many years. We've worked with so many clients, and yeah, not a single complaint at all. Like usually for my other matters, right? Like whether I know the agents or not, like they will tell me like, you know, something's up. They said this is not fair. Like what's going on here? But not a single one has complained about Mark. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can keep that record going, and likewise. All right, so thank you, sir. Now the next part is a step-by-step journey. The buying process is involving many people, and it's involving many steps. So as a first home buyer, you might Google, you know, what are the steps, and some websites break it down to about 5 key ones. It's actually more detailed than you think. There's actually many components when it comes to, you know, finding the right property, even getting yourself in the right mindset. And here we have a bit of a checklist. I've got a full breakdown of each of these available. So if any of our viewers or friends that want to get a copy of what each of those steps looks like in greater detail, get in touch with us. But for tonight, I wanted to focus around the buying process considerations. 1 being the finance strategy, 2 buying smart, and the legal matters. So rather than, you know, going through the nitty-gritty from start to finish, what are some key tips when you're starting off buying a property to get yourself financially right?
Yeah. So there are 2 main components. One is find out what your borrowing capacity would be, depending on if you buy a place to live in or to invest, and also consider how much funds you need. what sort of deposit you have, how much extra you need. And also another component, sorry, there's a third component, is to look at the sort of repayment. So what you can afford on paper may not be what you can afford or comfortable with in real life. Are you going to be happy with $1,000 a week mortgage, or would it be more feasible for something $700 to $800 per week mortgage? So I would say these are the three main components to consider, and it's a good starting point.
I think that's a great starting point. A lot of buyers are like, where do I start? Do I start window shopping? Do I start talking to agents? Do I get a legal representative first, or speak to my accountant? I think the first person you should be speaking to is either a financial planner or a mortgage broker. No one wants to go shopping and not know how much they can spend. Okay. In terms of the legal side, so what sort of tips would you give when you're talking about the legal side and settlements?
Legal side and settlement. Let's put it this way. If I was to divide the purchase process into two very distinct parts, one is before signing the contract and one is after signing the contract. Before signing the contract, generally speaking, that's probably the hardest part for the purchaser. Is your finance in place? Have you checked the property? Is the contract okay? That's where a bulk of the work is, and it's tough because there's so many moving components. There's no hard rule as to what comes first, what comes second. A lot of the times you just got to deal with it all in one go. So I tell my clients, like especially first home buyers, that there's no one path. There's a blob of things you got to consider, and you just got to have to tackle them one at a time. But having the right people around you can help you guide through that process. Now, after signing the contract, after contract exchange or after cooling off is over, that's the easy part. That's just the admin side. That's just signing loan documents, getting your funds ready, getting stamp duty, your payment stamp duty ready, and then wait for settlement, and we handle the rest. So look at it as those two separate aspects.
Okay, I think that second part, even though it sounds like there's not much, there's still quite a few. I think you've got to get your things together.
Yes.
Some people leave it willy-nilly, and then it comes to one month before settlement, they realize, oh no, I haven't got my finance set up. So hold on, what do I do?
I'll be like, hurry up, talk to Ling.
Awesome. And in terms of buying smart, I think we can all comment on this. Purchasing property it can be very emotional. You are investing quite a bit of your income, your life savings into these purchases. It's hundreds of thousands these days, millions of dollars investing into a single property, and you do need to weigh up what is your goals, what is your outcomes you want to achieve from purchasing this property. And look, some people, they're happy with just purchasing and this is going to be my forever home. No issue with that. But if your thoughts are, well, down the track, I've got to look after myself financially, I've got to build a portfolio, you need to weigh up, is this the right property for me? And something I didn't mention earlier was a lot of people that try to purchase their first property, throw all their eggs into one basket, and then it stops them from being able to purchase a new opportunity very quickly. So that's something really consider, and speak to a professional. As much as salespeople are salespeople, we are one of the top five most hated jobs in the world. You do need to do your research and speak to these professionals that have experience in those industries. They're at the cold front. They're seeing things day in, day out, on what's hot, what's being sold. And I guess the other point is, if you are purchasing anything, even if it is your first home, have an exit strategy. Treat it as if it's an investment. Do you want the best home in the worst suburb? Or do you want a not so great property, but in the best location that lends itself to growth, to cash flow benefits or stamp duty down the track? It can be emotional, but you've got to take a step back, take your time. Again, have the right sort of team around you. When we keep talking about this team, who are the right people that you need to have around you when you are purchasing properties?
Just straight off the bat, you got your agent, you got your mortgage broker, you got your lawyer or conveyancer. Then you got to do your due diligence on the property. The building and pest inspector or strata inspector to look at it. Probably mentioned this as well with strata report with reports. You got to be that industry used to be regulated, so people used to have to get a license before they can do those reports. But those regulations, but it's been deregulated, so you don't need to have those licenses. So you got to get the right person to do those inspections, get those report done, and advise you. Like that's just the start of it. If you want to do more due diligence, then you got to get more professionals in to check it out. Yeah.
I'll probably add more. Also, the tax agent or tax advisory. Some clients or some purchasers want to, before they even make a purchase, they want to know what will be the tax implication of buying this property as an investment now, or turn it into an investment in 1 or 2 years' time. So often they also engage a tax advisor to sort of map out. Accountant, advisory, or even financial planner.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. And guys, look, as much as this industry is quite lends itself to wealth creation, don't cheap out. Like there are some people that forget or don't want to pay that $200 or that $600 on settlement or just before settlement to get the right reports. Bringing up the reports is, especially if it's an existing property, if it's a strata-based property, like an apartment, a townhouse, have a strata report. We'll read the last minutes of the most recent AGM. See what you're buying into. Some people purchase and they realize it's like it's not just a strata fee. There's an additional sinking fund. Okay, and to get the pest and structural report, get someone qualified, not just some random that your auntie recommended because she used him before and he's a builder. So get someone qualified to go through the property and do your pre-settlement inspection properly. And at the same time, I know this is first home buyer event, but if you're an investor, also worthwhile, because only, and believe this, first time investors, only less than 20% of first time investors bother to purchase a depreciation report.
Wow.
Yeah. The accountants don't recommend that until it's asked or they don't bring it up. And sometimes it's too late. So get a depreciation report as soon as you start investing with a property.
What does it do? Like, Chris, what does the depreciation report do?
It looks at the how much properties are costing you and devalue over time. So on paper, how much it's depreciating, even though the market value appreciates. And this can be used by accountants to work on deductions on how much a property is actually costing you on paper to keep up that property.
So does that mean the buyer ends up getting more money in the pocket?
Absolutely. So well, in most cases, if you've got the right report and you've got the right team behind you, you're putting more money in your pocket and getting more tax back for most cases. Otherwise, it could work the other way around for negatively geared properties. But again, look, case by case, we'll can't say, just getting a depreciation report is going to put money in your pocket. Each case is different. But we'll go through that in next month's topic, which is investing. So that brings us to the end of our session today, guys. Everyone that has signed up for this particular session will be getting a copy of our recorded session, and here are our contact details if you'd like to contact Solon or Ling or myself for any of your property inquiries. Definitely access us at any time. Do you guys have anything in terms of final comments for first home buyers?
All I can say is there's just so much.
Yeah.
Find the right people, ask some questions. They're not going to charge you for every time you call them, but yeah, just find the right people. That's all I can say.
Some solicitors do.
Depends on what it is.
Not Solon.
Not me. Not all the time. Sometimes. If you call me too much, then I will.
All right, guys. I'll end it on this note. We always get asked the question, when is the right time to buy? When is the best time to buy? That was yesterday. When is the right time to buy is when you can enter the market, you're confident and you're comfortable. Get in touch with professionals like ourselves or others around you that you are confident and comfortable with to make that decision, because it will stay with you for quite a while. All right. Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in today.
Thank you.